Dr. Bruce Dawe AO was the patron of the Communication, Speech and Performance Teachers Incorporated from 2005 till 2020. My name is Annette Stoddart and I am the current Honorary President of the Communication, Speech and Performance Teachers Incorporated, and I'm pleased to introduce this presentation of a selection of Bruce Dawe's poems. This is a celebration of Bruce Dawe's contribution to Australian literature and culture.
If you've studied or read Australian poetry, chances are you've come across the work of Bruce Dawe. His focus is broad, his perspective Australian. From cornflakes to capital punishment, dogs to dictators, football to funerals. Few subjects or personalities escape his observation. He wrote lyrical, narrative and dramatic poetry, but was particularly attracted to the dramatic monologue. With its intrinsic subtext of irony, wit and satire, it was an ideal medium for Dawe to give his impression of people, public and private. His poetry is accessible, relatable and relevant. He penetrates the Australian ethos. Mateship, classlessness, a fair go, irreverence, the self-deprecating sense of humour. Dawe harnesses the Australian vernacular and his audience recognises themselves. Born in 1930 in Fitzroy, a working-class suburb of Melbourne, Bruce was the youngest of 4 children. It was the start of the Great Depression and unemployment grew to over 30%. His father was a farm labourer and work was scarce. The family was forced into a nomadic way of life to make ends meet. He drew on this experience in the poem Drifters.
One day soon he'll tell her it's time to start packing, and the kids will yell, "Truly?" and get wildly excited for no reason. And the brown kelpie pup will start dashing about, tripping everyone up. And she'll go out to the vegetable patch and pick all the green tomatoes from the vines. And notice how the oldest girl is close to tears because she was happy here. And how the youngest girl is beaming because she wasn't. And the first thing she'll put on the trailer will be the bottling set she never unpacked from Grovedale. And when the loaded ute bumps down the drive past the blackberry canes with their last shrivelled fruit, she won't even ask why they're leaving this time or where they're heading for. She'll only remember how when they came here, she held out her hands bright with berries, the first of the season, and said, "Make a wish, Tom. Make a wish."
Bruce attended 8 different schools and dropped out at the age of 16. His first job was as an office clerk, but he didn't stick with any job for too long. Labourer, office boy, gardener, farmhand, tailor out in a sawmill, fruit picker. He tried many occupations, inspiring the poem Doctor to Patient.
Please sit down. I'm afraid I have some rather bad news for you. You are now 17, and you have contracted an occupational disease called unemployment. Like others similarly afflicted, you will experience feelings of shock, disbelief, injustice, guilt, apathy, and aggression, although not necessarily in that order. And you'll no doubt be urged to try the various recommended anodynes. Editorials in newspapers, voluntary unpaid work for local charities, booze, other compulsive mind destroyers, prayer, comforting talks with increasingly less interested friends. It is small comfort to know the disease is universal and can accommodate the middle-aged and 30-ish, and strikes down those in camps in Kompong Sam and Warsaw. However, you will discover as time passes that your presence in itself will make others obviously uncomfortable. Try not to let your shadow at this stage fall across your neighbour's plate. Eat with the right hand only. Do not touch others in public. This can be easily misconstrued. Keep always downwind if possible. Please remember, you have now become our common vulnerability, personified. Oh yes, and by the way, you will be relieved to know the disease is only in a minority of cases terminal. Most, that is, survive. Next, please.
At 23, he completed his adult matriculation while working as a postman. He was a sharp observer of the popular culture of Melbourne, where AFL was the religion of the ordinary bloke. His reflections were stored in the poem Life Cycle.
When children are born in Victoria, they are wrapped in the club colours, laid in beribboned cots, having already begun a lifetime's barracking. "Khan!" they cry. "Khan!" feebly at first, while parents playfully tussle with them for possession of a rusk. "Ooh, he's a little tiger," and they are. Hoisted shoulder high at their first league game, they are like innocent monsters who have been years swimming towards daylight's roaring empyrean, until, now, heart shrapnel with rapture, they break surface and are forever lost. Their minds rippling out like streamers in a pure flood of sound. They are scarfed with light. A voice like the voice of God booms from the stand. "Oh, you bludger," and the covenant is sealed. Hot pies and potato crisps they will eat. They will forswear the demons, cling to the saints, and behold their team going up the ladder into heaven, and the tides of life will be the tides of the home team's fortunes. The reckless proposal after the 1-point win. The wedding and honeymoon after the grand final. They will not grow old as those from more northern states grow old. For them, it will be three-quarter time, with the score level and wind advantage in the final term. That passion persisting like a race memory through the welter of seasons, enabling old-timers by boundary fences to dream of resurgent lions and centaur figures from the past to replenish continually the present, so that mythology may be perpetually renewed. And chicken smallhorn return like a maze god in 1,000 shapes. The dance is changing, but the dance forever the same. The elderly still loyally crying, "Khan! Khan!" if feebly, unto the very end, having seen in the 6-foot recruit from Eaglehawk their hope of salvation.
His satirical arsenal began to grow. The dramatic monologue ideally suited his intention to reveal a character through all he or she says. Suburbia did not go unscathed when he wrote, "Mrs. Swipe speaks out."
So I said to her, I said, "I'm not one to complain," I said, "as you know only too well," I said. "But if you think I'm going to put up with this nonsense indefinitely, then you've got another think coming." "Oh yes," I said. "Please don't think you can come the bounce on me," I said, "because I've had just about enough, thank you very much," I said. "And the fact of the matter is," I said, "you can walk the whole length and breadth of Varicose Street," I said, "and you won't find a more long-suffering and charitable person than yours truly," I said. "But like the good book says, every worm must have its day, and mine is just around the corner," I said. "So you needn't stand there looking four-eyed and fish-faced as if Meadow Lee wouldn't melt in your mouth, since I have not the slightest intention of prolonging this conversation any further. Live and let live," I said. even though it seems to me there's some as would be hard-pressed to justify their miserable existence, naming no names, of course. And I dropped the paper parcel of prawn shells over her side of the fence. "I believe these are yours, madam," I said. And although it was a horrible cold day, the look on its face as I walked away kept me warm as toast for the rest of the morning.
In 1959, at the age of 29, he thought the RAAF was an opportunity for a good, steady job. He became a telegraphist and later an education assistant. He was posted to various places: Rathmines, Ballarat, Wagga and Toowoomba. He recalled his poem, Weapons Training, as coming hot from the lips of the drill instructor.
And when I say eyes right, I want to hear those eyeballs click and the gentle pitter-patter of falling dandruff. You there? What's the matter? Why are you looking at me? You are queer. Look to your front. If you had one more brain, it'd be lonely. What are you laughing at? You in the back row with the unsightly fat between your elephant ears. Open that drain you call a mind and listen. Remember first the cockpit drill when you go down. Be sure the old crown jewels are safely tucked away. What could be more distressing than to hold off with a burst from your trusty weapon, a mob of the little yellers, only to find back home, because of your position, your chances of turning the key in the ignition considerably reduced? All right then. Suppose, for the sake of argument, you've got a number 1 blockage and a brand new pack of Charlies are coming at you. You can smell their rotten fish sauce breath hot on the back of your stupid neck. All right, now what are you going to do about it? That's right. Grab and check the magazine, man. It's not a woman's tit. Worse luck or you'd be set. Too late, you nit. They're on you and your tripes round your neck. You've copped the bloody lot just like I said. You know what you are? You're dead. Dead. Dead.
In the late 60s, he was finding his stride, and his voice was being heard and noticed. His views were anti-racist, anti-authoritarian and pro-democratic. In 1967, Ronald Ryan was hanged in Melbourne. Many Australians were appalled. Daw's response? The Victorian hangman tells his love.
Dear one, forgive my appearing before you like this, in a 2-piece tracksuit, welder's goggles, and a green cloth cap, like some gross bee. This is the state's idea. I would have come arrayed like a bridegroom for these nuptials, knowing how often you have dreamed about this moment of consummation in your cell. If I must bind your arms now to your sides with a leather strap and ask if you have anything to say, these two are formalities I would dispense with. I know your heart is too full at this moment to say much, and that the tranquilizer which I trust you did not reject out of a stubborn pride should by this time have eased your ache for speech, breath, and the other incidentals that distract us from our end. Let us now walk a step. This noose with which we're wed is something of an heirloom. The last 3 members of our holy family were wed with it. The softwood beam it hangs from, like a lover's tree, notched with their weight. See now, I slip it over your neck, not under the left jaw, with a slip ring to hold the knot in place. There. Perfect. Allow me to adjust the canvas hood, which will enable you to anticipate the officially prescribed darkness by some seconds. The journalists are ready with the flashbulbs of their eyes raised to the simple altar. The doctor twitches like a stethoscope. You have been given a clean bill of health, like any modern bride. With this spring of mine from the trap, hitting the door lever, you will go forth into a new life, which I, alas, am not yet fit to share. But be assured, you will sink into the generous pool of public feeling as gently as a leaf. Accept your role. Feel chosen. You are this evening's headlines. Come, my love.
The catalyst for Dawe to pen a poem was as wide-ranging as the day's headlines. He confronts us with the ritual lament, the relentless tally of lives lost, the legacy of the Vietnam War, of all wars, with homecoming.
All day, day after day, they're bringing them home. They're picking them up, those they can find, and bringing them home. They're bringing them in, piled on the hulls of tanks, in trucks, in convoys. They're zipping them up in green plastic bags. They're tagging them now in Saigon. In the mortuary coolness, they're giving them names. They're rolling them out of the deep freeze lockers. On the tarmac of Tan Son Nhut, the noble jets are whining like hounds. They are bringing them home. Curly heads, kinky hairs, crew cuts, balding non-coms. They're high now, high and higher, over the land, the steaming Chow Min. Their shadows are tracing the blue curve of the Pacific with sorrowful, quick fingers, heading south, heading east, home, home, home. And the coasts swing upward, the old ridiculous curvatures of earth, the knuckled hills, the mangrove swamps, the desert emptiness. In their sterile housing, they tilt towards these like skiers. Taxiing in on the long runway, the howl of their homecoming rises, surrounding them like their last moments, the mash, the splendour, then fading at length as they move onto small towns where dogs in the frozen sunset raise muzzles in mute salute, and onto the cities in whose wide web of suburbs telegrams tremble like leaves from a wintering tree, and the spider grief swings in his bitter geometry. They're bringing them home now. Too late. Too early.
Dawe left the RAAF and became a teacher, and then a university lecturer. 70s political brouhaha brought forth On the Doctrine of the Separation of Powers.
If you want the very best in unfocused looks, the glazed stare that goes backward into the head to 10 Mile Farms and pastoral properties, ask them the one about the separation of powers, a surefire winner for confusion. Thebes had its riddle. Camelot, the sword in the stone. Rumpelstiltskin, too, posed a tricky one. But here is no Oedipus, Arthur or Lucky Princess, only arrogance that has outrun experience. Like the cat in the cartoon film that suddenly finds, rounding a corner at breakneck speed, its dream mouse changed into a monstrous boxing kangaroo.
He joined those at the barricades who felt it their responsibility as citizens of the world to resist those who defiled the environment. He imagined life in the new landscape.
In the new landscape, there will be only cars and drivers of cars and signs saying, "Free swap cards here," and exhaust fumes drifting over the countryside, and sounds of acceleration instead of birdsong. In the new landscape, there will be no more streets begging for hopscotch squares, only roads, the full width between buildings, and a packed mob of hoods surging between stoplights, so dense a sheepdog with asbestos pads could safely trot across. Streets will be underground and pedestrians pale. Motorists, on the other hand, will be tanned. In the new landscape, there will be no trees unless as exotica for parking lots. And weeds. Weeds, too, will be no more. And we will construct, in keeping with these times, a concrete god with streamlined attributes, not likely to go soft at the sight or sound of little children under the front wheels, or lovers who have willfully forgotten to keep their eyes on the road, while by a ceremonial honking of motor horns we'll raise a daily anthem of praise to him in whose stone lap are laid the morning sacrifices, freshly garlanded, death's rictus carved on each face with the sharp obsidian blade of fortuitousness. Steam hoses will be used to cleanse the altar. And in the new landscape, after a century or so of costly research, it will be found that even the irreplaceable parts will be replaceable, after which there will be only cars.
From environmentalism to consumerism, he penetrated a collective conscience in his poem, Agribusiness.
I was a broiler hen. I never knew daylight until my death. I lived for 8 weeks, if you call it living, in a crate. They hung me on a conveyor belt and slew me swiftly. I was 2 kilograms, dressed weight.
I was a factory sow. My cramped stall measured 2 feet by 6. I was fated for profitability to be super-ovulated. My life was merely farrowing. I was not at all the merry creature cartoons celebrated.
I was a veal calf. I had to be anemic all my life, which was not long. I was forced to overeat. The public's strong taste for pale flesh was my misery. Was my hunger for iron and roughage so terribly wrong?
Dawe appealed to the conscience of the reader as he unmasked prejudice in the poem Demons.
Should there be no demons in your country, it may be necessary to invent some. Not many, 2 or 3. It is the nature of demons to be ubiquitous, clever, though not unbeatably so, detectable by their distinctive pigmentation, pink to lobster red. Perhaps the colour is optional. Your black demon will suffice for many a turn, as will a yellow or a white. Next interpose, if possible, a border or a sea, beyond which your demon can, if need be, claim sanctuary. He's home, your instant hell. Construct your maps accordingly. Broad arrows aimed straight for the heartland. For the rest, sit back and watch how ignorance, that angel's food for demons, will fill out each demon's spindly frame. Flesh him, then see him walk upright among you, Bel's celebrant marking his progress whom you once set low. No longer the same snot-sleeved, nose-picking pocketbook demon awaiting summons, but one with a bona fide life of its own, and a devil's own errands to run.
There is an implicit, often paradoxical appeal in the tone and subtext of Dawe's poetry. He juxtaposed herd mentality and individualism in Description of an Idea.
You can nail it to a cross and it will rise again after 3 days. You can put it in the arena with several wild beasts and it will survive its own dismemberment. You can tie it to a stake and light faggots under it, and the crackling of the flames will speak volumes. You can exile it to Siberia, and it will still cry out with the voice of Ivan Denisovich. You can beat it to a bloody pulp in a public square in Peking, and it will still think of freedom. You can turn the Star Chamber and the SS and the KGB and the Savak and the State Security Bureau loose on it, and someone somewhere will still think of it, and someone somewhere will still die for it, and someone somewhere will give it new life. For an idea is an organism more mysterious in its actions than the miracidium. You can declare an idea anathema to 999,999,999 people, and the billionth will reach for the dictionary.
Bruce Dawe was not averse to speaking his poetry. A childhood memory is shared in Little Red Fox.
My daddy didn't live with us. He lived out in a shed, cooked his own potato chips, lonely went to bed. He was handsome with high cheekbones. His eyes were steel blue. The stories he told were mostly lies, but he made you wish them true. He had a little red fox cub and kept it on a chain. It ran around in circles all day long. Pain, pain, pain. He'd sit it upon his shoulder and walk around the place, and even Mother couldn't keep a smile from her face. Run, little red fox, run, run, run. Run, little red fox, run. One day he looked at me and said, "We all want to be free, the wild birds, the tame birds, that fox cub and me." He took the chain from around its neck. "You're on your own," he said. The fox cub ran and ran around in circles. Finally, he dropped dead. Oh, how he wept when he picked it up. Oh, how he broke down then. You see how it is, son, see how it is, with foxes and with men. Run, little red fox, run, run, run. Run, little red fox, run.
If you haven't read a Bruce Dawe poem, get a copy of Sometimes Gladness and dive in, or as Bruce would say, take a gander. He may give you a wry smile, you may nod in agreement, or he may prick your conscience.